So Xano now has support for Model Context Protocol. And Model Context Protocol is very cool. But I figure if you're watching this video, you already know that Model Context Protocol is very cool. And the question is, how do we bring it to bear in Xano, and why would we want to use Xano for that particular job? Because, there have been other tools that have been built to it, just sort of a little more codey. I'm thinking particularly of building with Cloudflare or the MCP reference specification. But the neat thing about, the Xano implementation of it is that it allows us to make use of this no-code function stack that really allows us to move very fast and create code that's relatively ownable. And that function stack is the reason why Xano is really good at making these APIs, right? So like I can go in, I can have an API, I can go search my silly little chess boxing application here. I also have on the same, Scratch space. I built this for a hackathon. And the idea is it just makes it very clear how it is I'm going to build something and how the logic should run to be able to, based on input that I have from up here, be able to go generate an output that's going to be useful for my customer. Well, MCP is really just kind of like that, like API inputs in terms of both being able to gather data and be able to express your intent, to be able to change things. I call it giving AI eyes and hands. But AI is a little bit different in the way that it wants to work with us. And those two ideas really come down to discoverability and natural language. These two differences allow MCP, are the reasons why MCP has, value over just, using the APIs. And we're going to be talking about those in turns. We talk about how to bring MCP in Xano. And I think using Xano for MCP can be a really good way to go very, very fast. So let's talk about this. So, Xano, for whatever reason, decided to call their MCP section AI tools. They're only MCP servers. This is the MCP server section. And so we can create multiple MCP servers inside our Xano instance. I, for example, have made two for state change, one that's a regular one and the other that is specifically targeted towards being able to support deep research in ChatGPT, because there's a special format that deep research uses. But you can create an MCP server that contains whatever tools you find handy. Now, this gets to like a really important part about MCP, which is that names and instructions matter a lot. This is what I mean by discoverability being something that really matters. Also, frankly, discoverability comes in the form of natural language. So the fact that we're calling this the, state change, YouTube MCP, demo, right? Remember, we don't need to call it an MCP server because it is an MCP server. There's no X factor about that. And this is going to be, fun utilities for interacting with state change YouTube. Okay, cool. So the more information you put in the instructions as to why this resource makes sense would be really helpful. For example, with state change, I talk about what state change is in terms of having information about hard technical problems, debugging techniques, mental models for software development, etc. And by doing that, it helps the LLM understand when it should be using these tools versus something else for solving a problem for their customer. I can say save. And now I have an MCP server. And now I'm going to go add a tool to that MCP server. A tool is basically just a function that's going to run inside the MCP, that's going to run in this context. You can think of it as being parallel. It's not quite the same, but parallel to an API endpoints relationship to an API group, right? It's like this is going to collect a whole bunch of them and be able to run them out. Now, the tools themselves, again, have an issue of discoverability and an issue of natural language. The first issue is discoverability. I'm going to make a very simple little echo server called greeting, and we'll get a friendly hello from the MCP. Use when you are feeling down. Send a message that is going to be lifting. Okay. So the idea here is that both the name of it as well as the instructions should be pointing towards how someone's going to use it. They're not going to use like Swagger documentation. This information was actually being delivered directly to the LLM to inform it as to what this tool does and whether it should be used. So I can say save here. And then I can add an input, which would be like a message, right? Now, the cool thing about the input here is that the description actually goes with the information's going out to describe this to the client, right? So this is going to be, uplifting message for a cloudy day, right? And this is going to, and try to give a hint to the LLM server or whoever's trying to help the user that when this particular tool would be helpful to them. So it's using this plain language to decide whether to run this. Right? We're not programming it to specifically run this endpoint, right? We're giving it hints and allowing it to decide. This is the essence of agentic decision making. I can say add that input, right? And I have a message. Now I'm going to need to add a function. So the function I'm just going to do is going to create a variable, right? Call it content, and say hello there, right? So basically say nothing at all. We're just going to see how this worked. So now it says hello there, and I can just do a quick run. I'm going to say run, and we'll give him back hello there, right? So more interesting is going to be something that actually is responsive to the message. Hello there, sir or madam. Your message today is, and we'll add a filter of replace, right? And we'll research will be for message, right? And the replacement will be the message, the input, right? So now let's just say save that, and we'll run that again. And you can see how if I just give it an input, you've got this. So you got this. So this allows us to identify that this particular message is something we want to send back in the event that we use this through our model. And we'll just, and now having set this up, we can set this up for publication, and we can just run it, right? Now, this gets to the problem of like, how do we give the MC, how do we tell a client about it, right? So here I'm going to bring in something else. I'm going to bring in the Cloudflare MCP Playground, which is a really cool little tool that's completely free that uses these simple little models in order to allow you to test an MCP server. So what we can do here is, and this is playground.ai.cloudflare.com. And so what I can do is back off this tool, and in the context of the MCP server, the state change YouTube demo, I can go grab the connection URL. I go grab this and say, I'm going to copy, you can use either of them. The SSE is the older standard. It has a wide a base of support insofar as anybody's supporting MCP at all. Streaming is the newer standard and is required by some of them. For example, I'm pretty sure that Anthropic's new Claude desktop support requires using streaming. But a lot of the rest actually kind of require SSE because that's all they've updated themselves to support. The streaming protocol only was introduced as a standard, I think, in March. So if this is on modelcontextprotocol.com, if I go take a look at the specification, yeah, right. You can see at the end of March, there was a new turnabout in the spec, which actually makes it far more useful than it used to be. And Xano is starting to catch up to what's going on in the spec. Okay, so the idea here is we have an MCP server that's going to give us a greeting, and we want to be able to test it in this playground. So how do we do that? We're going to, I'm just going to copy the older standard, like I say, because that's what most folks use. I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to paste this in. And now you can see the URL made up of my domain name, my, this little X2 thing, which is always here, /MCP, this is what Xano calls a canonical, which is an identifier for your MCP server. I'll show you how to change that in just a second. And then this is actually what it calls a token, which is going to be key to us being able to introduce authentication, followed by just the term SSE. You're going to find everything up to this point, everything before the SSE is standard. The SSE is going to be different. And then the different from the HTTP streaming version, which is going to say stream at the end instead. Otherwise, the URLs are the same. So I can connect, and now it says connected. You see, it knows that there's a total greeting. It's like, I am feeling sad. Send me an uplifting message. They run that. It determines, oh, hey, look, it got it from the tool, right? Hello there, sir or madam. Your message today is that you are strong and capable and things will get better soon. I'm so glad for that. So this is the basics, right, of how we can have a message go. And you can imagine that like one of the big use cases here is going to be like, searching for things or being able to express something into your system, or whatever else. But let's keep going here. Let's talk about how, having something that's public like this is one thing, but like most of the stuff we want to put out there isn't really public, right? It's going to be like specific to people who are logged in, who are users of our system. But we don't have access to like the built-in Xano authentication right now, because Xano authentication is based on the authentication header, authorization header. And the problem here is that the Xano does not have support for the client to discover how to get that kind of token, right? Through a process that's called OAuth. I'm sure it's coming down the way, but there's a second way of doing this too, which is to encode information about the user, identifier of the user, directly into the URL through like having some sort of, secure string that we're going to work with. So let's talk about how we would do that. Now, in my, little test database here, I have, users, right? And I have, email, which is, hi there too. And then I'm going to call it, hi@statechange.ai. And then I can have a username, password, and I'm going to create one more thing here. I'm going to create an MCP key. See, the MCP key is going to be a unique key that will identify this particular user. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to have another one, which is going to be hello@statechange.ai. And the MCP is going to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay. And now I'm going to have after that, something else, which is going to be a, name. And this is going to be, John Smith. And this is going to be, Roberta Jones. Okay, so we have John Smith and Roberta Jones, and there can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And the idea behind having a key, and the way I would usually make these keys is through having the UUID functionality in Xano. So I could sort of imagine creating a function here where I'm going to add a function. It's going to be set set MCP key, right? And then the input's going to be a table reference to my user table, and then I'm going to say that I'm going to do a UUID, generate UUID function, and which is going to be called UUID. I'm going to call it key, save it as key. And then I'm also going to do an edit record in user, right? Based on the ID being the same as the user ID that came in the door, and the MCP key is just going to be the variable that we just created, key. All right. So now I have a function called set MCP key that is going to set the MCP key to that particular ID, right? So if I do 1, right? And now what you'll find is if I go back over to database, oh, there we go, user. Okay, now you see my MCP key starts to look like something a lot more secure, right? And then I can also do that maybe for user number 2. Run. Okay, and now I have now we have the database user, and if I refresh this, you can see both of them are now set to something that's nice and secure, not just my little ABCD thing. Great. So the idea is I only want to allow my users to be able to access my MCP server, right? And the way I'm going to do that is what's called URL-based authentication. So I can go back to here and go over to my AI tools. Okay, fine. And go to my state change and see that I've got this greeting here, right? And previously it was just sort of working for everybody, as we saw in the AI LLM playground. But what I can really do here is I can now say I want to create a set middleware for it. And the middleware allows me to authenticate it. So I'm going to customize this, and I'm going to add and add pre-middleware, right? And what middleware do I want to add? None of that. Nope, no sir. So I'd like to add, well, I guess I just have to create it. So I'm going to create it over here, discard the changes. I'm going to just create middleware over on my right, library, middleware, and create new middleware. And my new middleware is going to be MCP auth. And it's going to be a type merge with a critical. So the idea here is that I'm going to ask about this particular user. Now, I want to know which user I need to work with. Fortunately, the idea here is that there is a token that will be specified in the URL. And that token is where that second MCP part goes. So remember I was looking at this thing, looking at the URL, and I was looking at how, over here, this was this thing called, MCP, right? 2 MCPs in here. Well, the second MCP, I could do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And it would give me something different. In fact, let's prove that out for a second. We're going to come back to the auth here, but let's go take a look at AI tools. And we're going to look at it in the tool set, right? And we're going to go back to my greeting. And how about instead of my greeting where I said, hello there, sir or madam, how about instead of sir or madam, I gave it whatever my identifier was. Token, right? And I'll just do another replace down here of replace, right? And I'll replace the all caps token with, and this is the fun part, with a toolset token. So toolset's a new thing that we see now in Xano, like both for your functions, for your middleware, but especially for your toolset tools. These are things that are available to you about the toolset itself that have come in the door. So like the name, the JSON is going to be like a bag of information about the about this particular MCP server, but the token is going to be from the URL itself. So if I just apply this for a second, I say save, then I'm just going to go publish this up. If I were to go back over to the LLM playground, remember how it said, hello there, sir or madam, and I changed it? And now I just change it to ABCDEFG, right? In this particular location. You can run this. Hello there, ABCDEFG, right? Because ABCDEFG was actually the name of the token, right? So if I just disconnect this and I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I say connect to that again, and I just tell it to, I am feeling kind of okay, but I could use a pick me up message. Good. Okay, so the idea is, so you now see how like I can get that out of the URL, right? And that's coming from the thing we saw over here that is called, token, right? So we can put this to work in the form of the middleware, right? So we can now say the middleware can check the token. So let's, let's do a get record, right? From user, where the key is equal to the token that just got passed. That's the essence of the authentication. That's the ball game, right? Where we can link the token to the user. Now, in the case of state change, I actually have one more level of articulation. I have a list of keys and I have a list of users and they sort of relate to each other. But this is a really simple way of going about it. Now I can say I'm going to go get that, right? And by the way, if you aren't found, I'm going to make a precondition, right? And we'll just make sure that the user 1 is not null, okay? Just confirm the user exists. And then the error type will just be access denied. So if the user isn't found, well, then we're going to bail. Save. Okay, so the idea now is as simple as if I find the user, then I send it back, right? But there's actually one more benefit I get from this, which is when I authenticate using middleware, this is your free bonus. When I authenticate using middleware, I can, I can have, user 1 come back as user, and this will get merged in as an input. So for those of you who haven't really worked with middleware before, this is actually a really cool aspect of middleware that will become really useful in just a second. Because now I can say publish that, publish, right? And now I have MCP authentication that contains all this good stuff. Now, what I can do now is go back to my greeting. In fact, what I'll probably do is make it so that all of my, all of my tools that are in my MCP server will use this particular middleware. I'll say save. Okay, So this means that like, if I am authenticated, it should say okay. If I'm not authenticated, it should not allow me to get a greeting. Let's test this out for just a second here. Remember, I've got my good users, I've got my good MCP keys here, right? So let's now go back over to the playground, and let's remember that I had this stuff in here. Right now it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is not a valid key, right? So let's copy and paste this and get it to run on my server again. And it's gonna freak out. It'll error out because it won't be able to get it. Error code access denied. You see, it couldn't actually get it going, right? It was able to try the thing, but you see it hit the precondition because it didn't actually have a good access key. Let's give it a good access key. And then we'll go back over to our, our playground, right? Let's connect. And now we'll replace this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with my actual token, right? So I'm just doing a little string replace here. Connect. Now we'll run. Ooh, sorry, I need to go, gonna give it the same kind of, mid message. See, now it gave me an answer, but we can do a little better, right? We don't need to just connect the code. The code is not very interesting. What about, if I'm going to get an uplifting message, I'd like it to know who I am. So let's work with that. And I'm going to go back over to the server now, right? And I'm going to go into my greeting, which right now knows about my token. But we can do better. What if we just have one but name, right? How can I replace name with that? Something useful. And the answer is I can get it because I know it's in the middleware. So in my input, there's nothing that matches token, right? Right now, there's only the message, or is there? This gets to be the secret weapon. See, when I made that middleware, it was set to merge. Merge means it's going to add whatever I put into the response from a structure point of view into the list of inputs that are available to the function stack. Now, Xano doesn't currently surface, at least as of this recording, doesn't currently surface these fields in the function stack, even though it knows I have that particular middleware. Instead, I have to kind of hack my way to get it, in this case by using an expression. So if I just, turn this into an expression, I can say, input dot user dot name. Because I know input, there's something called user, and in the user, there's something called name. I know that because I set it up in the middleware, but I'm not going to get any help from Xano from an autocomplete point of view, or even exposing it. I have to do it, and I have to do it through the expression. But when I do, I get all sorts of superpowers because the fact that I've already gone through the trouble of getting the user is now exposed to me. This is kind of like the sort of the for free auth ID that we get for an authenticated endpoints, except, in this case, it's a full object, and it's a little more hidden than average. But let me apply that for a second because it's really slick. I'm going to say save, I'm going to say publish, and I'm going to go back over to my worker. And now I'm going to say, nobody remembers me. Well, say something nice. John Smith. It remembered that my name was John Smith. That's fantastic. And it knew that because I'd put in this token, right, that's here. Right? And if I disconnect and I say, well, I don't want just, John Smith's, I want, I don't know, like with AA at the end, right? Something with corruption to it. And I connect, well, it'll connect and I will say, let's try the same message again. And it'll freak out because it doesn't actually authenticate, right? So now I've set up that I can only do it with the correct key because I know of that position where it goes into. Let's copy that for a second. This is actually a good use case for how we set this up with an auth, right? Just to get the user. If it doesn't work, precondition out. And if it does work, I get access to the user. And now that gives me basically all the elements of role-based, the prerequisites, right, of a role-based access control system that I can then implement through logic in the function stack, which I think is pretty cool. I can also create a function for myself that is, get MCP key for user, actually MCP URL for user, which might be important for me to deliver to like a front end at some other point because I have to have an app that's going to tell the user about their particular token. So I can say save here. And I can say, maybe I'll just sort of take a user ID as an argument. And then I will just make myself a string, call it URL. And it's just going to be based on this particular stuff in here, right? Now I can just say token. I'll say the filter is going to be replace. And which is going to be based on user1.mcp key, right? Now I can say save, and if I run it, then I can go pull user ID number 1, and it gives me the URL that I was looking for, right? That has this F384 thing, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to put this into the LM playground. I can disconnect that, right? And paste that in. And now I get all that same good stuff and it works, right? And I'm going to tell it to do another message, run it, right? And we'll be able to successfully connect because it actually gave me a good URL. Now, that sort of completes the cycle in terms of being able to have a tool that is able to be authenticated, right? Using middleware to give good data from Xano using MCP. Now we have something we can safely give out to our customers, but we might not choose to because, it doesn't actually look all that friendly, right? This DZPO off thing isn't super friendly. Like the token we can live with as being less friendly because that's specific to the user. Well, you can explain that part. But the other part here, you want to have like a good domain. Always recommend using custom domains. The X2 MCP, that part's fine, but this CDPO thing, that's kind of ugly, right? Can we do something about that? The answer, yes. We can go back here and state change YouTube demo. I can change by going to where it says security here and change the canonical ID. I don't bother changing the GUID. There are good reasons not to play with that. But this one I might call YouTube, right? And I can say save, right? And now when I go pull the connection URL, if I were to just to look at it in here for, I'll just bring it up in the browser for a second because it's easy to see. You can see how it shows as /YouTube. No longer has the stuff. This makes it so much easier to look at. And in fact, if I go back over here to my make function here, then I can also fix this guy and say, you know what, sir? You can say YouTube, right? Say save. And now I can go run again. I can go copy that text. I can go into my workers area. I can say disconnect this. Paste that in, with a nice friendly YouTube name, right? I'm going to say connect. And copy that. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do you one better. Let's go back over to here and let's look at user number 2. That way I'm not looking at the same user all the time. Let's see what Roberta probably deserves a nice message too. And we'll copy that. And we'll go over to here. And we will just say disconnect. And then, different tag. And we will then connect into, run that, give another message, see how it does. Roberta remembers Roberta's name. Isn't that nice? And now we have a way of sending a message that is going to be specific to this individual user. We have something that's nice and shareable. We have a function that allows us to do that with a great deal of simplicity. And we have our MCP server. Now, there is one more aspect that's probably worth giving some consideration to when it comes to security, at least within the bounds of like what Xano currently supports. It would be even better if we had OAuth 2 security, but hopefully that'll be coming down the road relatively soon. But right now, this is actually what, frankly, most MCP servers do anyway. In fact, it's a level above security most MCP servers have. So I'm pretty content using this, and we're using this right now in state change. But there is one more consideration, which is the list of tools themselves can give an attacker like a vector for understanding what's going on. And right now, when I'm looking at this, you see how it shows me available tools? Well, if I were to disconnect and give it a bad URL, it would, like if I just said, XXXXX, right? And I did a connect here, it would connect and tell me about the tools, even though the tool wouldn't actually run. And there can be, and because like the description's going with the tool, maybe you don't want to show any of that. You really want this thing to be locked down. And, we can do something about that. We can do that with a trigger. So here we have, we talked about middleware already, and now we're going to talk about the trigger. The trigger allows us to control tool instructions, because the way MCP works under the covers is that when they get the URL, they can call a specific command on that URL to get the list of the tools like we're looking at here, whether it be 1, 5, or 100 of them. And you don't have to just show all those tools. You can use this trigger kind of as like middleware for that list API to determine which tools are actually going to be shown. So we're going to call this, MCP filter tools by off, right? I'll say save. And I'm going to click into that. And now I can have a function stack. Now, what this does, it brings as an input what's called tool set and the tools. The tools are really the important part here. So the first thing I can do is I can get a record that looks up that same user just like we did before. And I go by the user table. I'm going to look it up by the MCP key, and I'm going to use where it says toolset token here, right? So that way it's, the one for Roberta and one for John. And I'm going to say save here. And really the key question is whether or not I found anything, right? So I'm going to say, if, add a condition, if user 1, right, is, equal to nothing, right? Basically, if nothing comes back when I go look up the user based on that key, save, then I want to, update the variable that's called tools to basically say it doesn't have anything inside. Because right now, tools is a list. You can see it's structured as an array of object up here. It is a list of the tools that are exposed. In this case, it'll just expose greeting, right? And have a list of items, one, which is going to be greeting and its description. And you can go modify all of that. You can just modify the way it's described. You can modify whether it's shown at all. I'm using it to modify how it's shown. By doing this, I can say save, and I can publish this. And I've created a very simple way to lock down my MCP server so that instead of, oh, wait, you can try to use it, but it's going to block you, I can just disconnect and connect for a second. And look at that. It gave me nothing, right? Because it couldn't get back a tool. And now it won't let me connect. But, if I didn't have those X's in here, if I just had a proper URL that was made up of a token that went with somebody who was, securely in here, right? Editing in these kind of situations actually quite hard. With EF, see, now it shows me the tool. So, and you can like do things in the middle here, right? Like say, I want to show these two tools if you are authenticated and these two tools if you're not. You can even, figured out who the user is based on their ID that came through the URL, decide that there's going to be some people you want to allow into your system, and some people who you frankly just don't, and you do not want them to come in at all. These are the key functionalities that you can apply to have a pretty secure MCP server that is available to your employees, available to your partners, available to your customers. And all you need to do is be giving each of them their own URL. And we've already talked about how you can relatively easily generate that URL by having the idea of a key that goes with that particular user. You can introduce the idea of key rotation, etc. And the thing about MCP is that it's really fast moving. And the techniques that you use today are not necessarily going to be the same techniques you use tomorrow. I kind of wonder how well this video itself is going to age. But the most important thing is making sure that you are giving your clients the best foot forward for your business. And for me, the big opportunity here is that rather than you having to create a whole lot of software on the front end to define the user experience, you can be delivering your data, your logic, your intelligence, your business insight directly into wherever it is that they work. And you can be providing a better experience for something that actually could be a whole lot less work than it was before. We'll talk more about the business implications about this in future sessions. But right now, I hope that this has given you enough to be able to go try making your own first MCP server with Xano. And I would absolutely love to hear about it, because at State Change we work on the hardest 5% of challenges related to shipping software. And often the hardest 5% is the new stuff, the stuff that's changing all the time. And I find this to be super, super exciting. And I can't wait to hear what you build, and talk to you next time.